Good morning. Surprising as it may seem, we are having difficulty getting past a certain hump. We have heard truth, we have read it, we have loved it in its beauty, but we keep finding that it glows in the book and somehow flickers in the kitchen, in the shop, in the quiet of the night. Do you see that? The issue before us is not whether the words are beautiful. The issue is whether, in the ordinary hour, truth has become our lived consciousness, breath by breath, step by step, so that we do not reach for it as a remedy, but we walk in it as a baseline. Now, to move past this hump, let us not take a vow of labor, for we have labored enough with thoughts and formulas. For 7 days, only 7, we will set aside several brief intervals each day, 3 to 5 minutes at a time. That is all. And the one rule is this: no striving, no mental treatment, no affirmations. We are not going to think about God, talk to God, or argue with the universe. We are simply going to turn within and yield. Do you see that? Not a performance, not a mental push, but an interior consent. If you like words to open the door, let them be only this: I am willing to be still. I am a willing instrument. Let you be God. And then, silence. You may say, and rightly, if this is real, it ought to show itself. Yes, it ought. Not as fireworks, but as something measurable in life. As a touch of peace where there was agitation, as quiet guidance where there was confusion, as less fear where fear had been our counselor. Do you see that? We are not adding more belief, we are inviting evidence. We are asking that what has been literature become life, that what has been a concept become consciousness. And we will test it on the smallest canvas. 5 minutes, then life proceeds, so that we cannot pretend we did it by willpower or suggestion. Frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can the writings or the recordings do it for you. They can point, they can remind. But the transition from lovely words to living presence cannot be outsourced. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. This is not duality. This is the simple acknowledgement that the place whereon you stand, this very moment of awareness, is holy ground when you stop crowding it with effort. Do you see that? So the arc of this week is plain. No display, no campaign, just honest practice and honest reporting. What happens when, several times a day, you quietly yield the reins and let presence be presence? In 7 days, we will not have learned more truth. We will have allowed a measure of it to become our baseline. That is our hump. That is our experiment. Shall we begin? Do you see that? Now let us be very plain about the protocol, because if we miss this by an inch, we wander a mile. Turning within is not turning to a far-off deity to do something for us. This is not duality. This is not appealing to a power outside, not pleading with a presence somewhere. Turning within is simply the yielding recognition that the presence already at the core of your awareness is the only presence, the only law, the only life. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? We are not trying to summon God. We are consenting to acknowledge God as being where we stand. Now the practice in copyable language, so there is no confusion. You stop. You become still. You let the mind's solving impulse drop. Yes, deliberately let it drop, even for these few minutes. And inwardly, without strain, you acknowledge, God is my being. God is the only law. The Father within me is the life, the mind, the action here. Then you rest. If words come, let them be only this: I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am a willing instrument. Let thy grace be the activity. And then, silence. Do you see that? Not a technique, a consent. We must say what it is not, because we have all tried the substitutes. It is not self-hypnosis. We are not attempting to project a state and then believe it. It is not positive thinking. We are not pasting a bright label over fear. It is not a method to control outcomes. We are not moving chess pieces by thought. And it is not a new form of willpower dressed as prayer. The strain is the sign we missed the door. This is yielding, not asserting. This is recognition, not persuasion. Why does this work? Because it does not add a power. It reveals the only power. It does not install a new mind. It uncovers mind already present as your life. When you say within, I am willing to be still, let you be God. You are not creating a relationship. You are acknowledging a fact. I and the Father are one. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. God is the substance and activity of my being. Do you follow that? The turning is a pivot from personal management to presence as cause. And we must have a right metric. We are not looking for visions, lights, and dramas. Success is not fireworks. Success is a detectable lessening of fear. Success is that a quiet, right impulse appears without strain. Turn here, wait now, speak, be silent, and it carries peace in its wake. You may find midday that where anxiety tugged, a softness holds. Where you were about to argue, a wordless patience takes over. That is the fruit. Not hysteria, but hush. Not bravado, but a baseline of inner okayness. Do you see that? So the protocol stands. Stop. Be still. Let the mind's solving impulse drop. Acknowledge, God is my being. God is the only law. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am a willing instrument. Let thy grace be the activity. Rest. No managing, no fixing, no bargaining. Only this interior consent. And then go about your day, watchfully, not to police results, but to notice the less fear, the quiet guidance, the freedom from strain. That is the sign we have yielded to God as being. Now, before we walk through the days, let us face quietly the central frustration. We can quote the Master, we can quote Isaiah, we can cite Krishna, and we can say we believe, yes, and even sincerely, and still, at the first sound in the night, the body tenses as if we were alone in a dangerous world. Do you see that? Somewhere between the page and the pulse, the bridge hasn't been crossed. We hold statements in the head, but we have not yet become the consciousness from which those statements were born. And so I must say, as plainly as ever I know how to say it, literature is not life, and concepts are not consciousness. Scriptures, writings, recordings, even the most luminous, are of no more power than poetry, as long as they lie on paper or rattle in memory. Reading is preparatory. Memorizing is preparatory. Agreement is preparatory. When, however, even one principle is embodied, when it is realized as the actual state of your awareness, then it functions as law, as presence, as cause. Then the words are no longer the point. The life behind them is moving as you. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you follow that? This is why we cannot satisfy ourselves with gathering more beautiful phrases. The turning point is not learning more truth. It is becoming the state of consciousness that truth describes. And that is why these 7 days are not a self-improvement scheme. They are a proof to yourself that the infinite way is not a message. It is an experience. The only way you will know that is when, in the tiny intervals of yielding, a hush comes that you did not manufacture. A guidance appears that you did not calculate. A fear lifts, and you cannot say why except, "The Father within me, He doeth the works." Frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can the writings or the recordings do it for you. They can point. You must embody. Now I know, someone says, but why must you repeat, repeat, repeat? And I received such a letter only yesterday. Well now, because repetition is precisely the hammer that drives truth past the intellect into realization. We are not hypnotizing ourselves. We are letting the same light strike the same place until it burns through. Do you see that? The mind's complaint is part of the old management system trying to keep the reins. Enough talk, it says, while clinging to its substitutes. No, better the single truth said and yielded to 100 times than 100 truths entertained once. And so, as we move into the week, watch the places where the personal self tries to retake command. It will come with money, counting from the bank book outward. It will come with time, negotiating with the calendar as if the law of God were bound to ours. It will come with the body, listening first to sensation before turning to the presence. It will come with relationships, rushing to save or to be saved by persons. It will come with identity, trying to achieve holiness by effort. Each day we will not fight the picture. We will meet the belief within, until there is less of me managing and more of grace as the activity. This is the diagnosis. Where there is merely belief, there is anxiety. Where there is realization, there is peace. And peace, quietly and unarguably, is the sign we have crossed from literature into life. Do you see that? Day 1, then. You take the first 3 to 5 minutes. You sit down, and if you are like the rest of us, the moment you give consent to stillness, the mind runs to the desk with a stack of folders. Phone that person. Answer that email. You forgot the bill. You are failing at this already. This is a waste of precious minutes. Do you see that? The old management senses it is about to lose a little territory, and it stages a last-minute board meeting, urgent, noisy, filled with accusation. And, if it cannot frighten you with tasks, it will draft criticism. You are not spiritual. You do not know how. You should be farther along. All of that is one gesture. Keep control. Keep the reins. Keep you out of the inner sanctuary. Now this is the very point of practice. Not a mistake in it. You notice it. And you quietly, consciously, lay down the tools. Inside yourself, without strain, you say, I am not here to fix. I am here to acknowledge presence. Thy grace is sufficient unto this moment. Then, if you like, the old prayer that is not a plea, but a truth. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. And then you refuse the invitation to negotiate with the details. You are not turning to a far-off God to mend your calendar. This is not duality. You are acknowledging God as being, here, as the substance and activity of this very awareness. God is individual being. God is my being. God is the only law operative here. And then, silence. Let the solving impulse drop. If it pops back up, you drop it again. Not as a war, simply as recognition. Do you see that? And something, almost imperceptibly at first, shifts. Not bliss, not angels in the room, but the wheel slows a quarter turn. A little space opens between thoughts, and in that space, the body softens. Shoulders that were at attention settle. Breath that was shallow drops a little lower. A sigh you did not command arrives and is gone. You have the odd, tender sense that for a few seconds, the atmosphere itself took over. You did not add a power. You ceased exertion long enough for grace to be the activity. The proof is not loud. It is the unarguable fact that peace came without your arranging it. Do you see that? Now I must say it again because it safeguards the whole path. I cannot do this for you, nor can any book, recording, or video. They can point. Frankly, they must go away while you turn. The only verification is your own inner contact. If today it is 5 seconds, that is your 5 seconds, earned by surrender, not by will. That is more than literature. That is life touching life. Guard that. Respect that. So we cross the first hump. Even 2 honest minutes reveal that peace is not created. It is uncovered. It was there before your plan, before your effort, under the clamor. And as you rise and go about the day, do not hold a pose. Simply notice. The edges are softer. The next right impulse is a little clearer, and the fear that used to sprint now walks. The first day's work is this. When you stop striving, peace appears as though it were already there, because it was. Do you see that? Day 2, then, brings the next discovery. Life is not waiting for us to finish our practice before it presents a bill, a symptom, a message from a relative, a troubling headline. And at once the old reflex wants to run out to the picture, call someone, argue with the figure, fix the bank book, battle with the body. Do you see that? This is where the second light must come. You are not contending with a person, or a body, or a bank account, or a circumstance. You are meeting a belief, an appearance in your own consciousness. Where else could you meet it? Where can you meet 2 times 2 is 5, except in your own mind? Suppose I come to you and press upon you the claim that 2 times 2 is 5. You would not grab my wrists and wrestle me to the floor, nor would you go out to correct the sidewalks and lampposts, lest they believe it too. Quietly, within yourself, you would know the truth. The claim would not alarm you because you have contact with a principle that is law. Do you see that? Now, translate this to fear, to lack, to discord. When the picture shouts, you are running out. This body is failing. This relationship is breaking. The battleground is not out there. Within yourself, you pause, you turn, and you recognize. This is a claim. It has no law. God is the only law. And so the practice today is very concrete. Stop. Be still. Let the solving impulse drop. Then, without heat, you acknowledge, Father, I am not meeting a condition. I am meeting a belief. I can of mine own self do nothing. Thou doest the works. God is the only law. God is my being. Sit with that, not as a formula to force a change in the picture, but as the simple, clean recognition of what is. The moment you try to meet the picture in a person or a body or a bank book, you are in competition with matter and with minds. The moment you meet it within, as a claim without God law, you are under no competition at all. This is not duality. You are not appealing to a distant power. You are acknowledging the presence that is the substance of your awareness. Now the measurable change of day 2 is subtle, but unmistakable. Less reactivity. The bill may still lie on the desk. The symptom may still whisper. The message may still blink on your phone. But they are relieved of the authority to dictate your inner weather. A hush comes first. Sometimes the outer harmony follows swiftly, sometimes slowly. But the tyranny is broken. Your atmosphere belongs to God, and you are beginning to know it. Do you see that? It is not bravery. It is recognition. Not denial of appearances, but refusal to enthrone them as law. And notice, as this steadiness appears, the mind will propose a new strategy. Ah, I see. This turning within will get me results. Let me use it to make the check arrive, to change the diagnosis, to fix that person. There is the next temptation. The old management wants to hire God as a consultant. No, we are not employing a power. We are yielding to the only power. Tomorrow we will face that squarely. For today, let the victory be this. You have stopped fighting the picture, and you are meeting belief within your own consciousness, quietly, lawfully, in God. Do you see that? Day 3, then, and we must face the most polished disguise of the old management. It says, fine, turn within, yes, but do it to manifest, to persuade, to get the outcome. Use this to make the check arrive, to change that diagnosis, to soften that person. Do you see that? It is the same personal will in a prayer shawl. It is the impulse to control dressed in spiritual language. And I tell you as plainly as I can say it, turning within is not a method to make life obey you. It is the yielding by which grace is permitted to be the activity of your life. Help must come as the activity of the Christ, not as my understanding, not as your cleverness, not as mental effort. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Do you follow that? Now the practice is very simple and very exact. You sit these few minutes. You let the solving impulse drop deliberately, and you say within, without strain, I am willing to be still. I am a willing instrument. Nothing must come to me. Nothing must be achieved by me. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this situation, unto this relationship, unto this body, unto this decision. Then you rest. Not to make something happen, but to allow the only something that is ever real to reveal itself as presence. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to acknowledge that God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? What changes? The third measurable sign appears. Guidance begins to come as an impulse, not as a conclusion. It is gentle, quiet, but it carries a weight no argument can mimic. It is unmistakably not manufactured. You will know it by its atmosphere. No rush in it, no threat in it, no payoff promised. It comes as a nudge. Wait. call, hold, now, no. Or sometimes only a stillness that says, nothing is required. And the body recognizes it before the mind applauds. A warmth, a small release, the breath dropping of itself. The personal manager hates this because it cannot claim authorship. Do you see that? Test it in small things today. You start an email. The impulse says, not now. Obey, and there is peace. You reach for the phone. The hush says, wait 1 hour. And when you do, the words come unlabored. You plan to press your point in a conversation. Grace moves you to listen, and the conversation opens by itself. You were about to overwork the body. An interior no turns you toward a 10-minute rest that restores the whole afternoon. None of this is passivity. It is not laziness. It is grace as activity, replacing your pushing with the government of God. Father, thou doest the works. And please notice, this is not an agreement to suffer outcomes. We are not giving up. We are giving over. The outcomes that flow from grace will often look startlingly apt. Doors open, timing clicks, the right word appears. But even when no outer change is immediate, the tyranny is gone. The baseline is peace, and from peace, the next step is sure. Do you see that? Tomorrow, we will let this be tried under pressure. Money and time are the two loudest foremen of the old regime. They shout the orders. Hurry! You can't afford to wait. Count from the bank book outward. We will not argue with them in their yard. We will learn where supply truly comes from and how timing reveals itself when the clock is not our God. For today, let this be your covenant. No using God, no employing power, only yielding, only grace as the activity, quiet, sufficient, present. Day 4. Now we come to the two loudest overseers of the old regime, money and time. They shout at you the first thing in the morning. Can I afford this? What if I run out? What if I'm late? How will I ever catch up? Do you see that? It is hypnosis. It is not an intelligent estimate of reality. It is the suggestion that safety and order are out there, in digits, in clocks, in other people's calendars. And the moment you look there first, you have already placed power outside yourself. You have, in effect, said, bank book, be thou my law. Schedule, be thou my God. Now, we cannot let that stand. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Supply and timing are not manufactured by anxiety. They are revealed as you stop outsourcing power and turn within. Let us take the bank book plainly. If you draw your atmosphere from figures, even good figures, you are poor, because fear is still your governor. If you look to your interior being, quietly acknowledging, the Father within me is the substance and activity of my life, you relocate law where it belongs. This is not duality. We are not pleading with a far-off treasury. We are recognizing the one life as the very substance of our being. All that the Father hath is mine, not as dollars in a pile, but as sufficiency, as rightness, as uncoerced flow. Do you see that? Now we must preempt the old misunderstanding before it recruits you. This is not license to spend recklessly, to charge whims to the universe, to throw away watches and miss your appointments while chanting peace. No, that is metaphysical platitude cliché business. The practice is the same simple protocol. Stop. Be still. Let the solving impulse drop. Then, inwardly, I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace govern supply and timing here. And then the question, clean and not bargaining. Father, is this for us right now? Then wait. A yes or a no or a wait will present itself, not as a thunderclap, but as that quiet, weighted impulse we have begun to recognize. Receive it as grace, not as deprivation. Do you see that? Try this today, with a purchase, with a commitment, with your leaving time. Bring the calendar and the price tag into the sanctuary, within, not as things to manipulate, but as occasions for God to be God. If the impulse is yes, move, and you will find the provision unlabored. If the impulse is no, you will feel the relief before you feel the loss. If it is wait, you will discover that real supply includes right timing, and that waiting is not delay. It is provision arriving as order. And here is the fourth measurable change. You check less. You whip yourself less. Timing gets exact. Emails are answered at the hour when words are given instead of grabbed. The call you were straining to make rings you. You leave 5 minutes later and arrive on time, because grace used the traffic for you instead of against you. The bills are handled, not by heroics at midnight, but by steps shown in the light of morning. There is less frantic planning, fewer contingency piles, and yet more gets done without the internal lash. Do you see that? This is not passivity, it is governance. Grace as the activity, replacing fear as the foreman. So let this be your covenant today. No counting from the bank book outward. No bowing to the clock as law. Turn within. Acknowledge God as the only law of supply. God as the rhythm of your hours. Ask, Father, is this for us right now? And accept the answer as sufficiency. Then watch how the day carries you, not as a passenger without will, but as an instrument through which order flows. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. And where God is law, there is no shortage, and there is no late. Do you see that? Day 5 then. And we bring this same light into the most tender ground, our relationships. Here the old management dresses itself up as virtue. It says, fix them, rescue her, lecture him, carry their life on your back and call it love. Do you see that? It feels noble, it looks generous, and yet underneath is fear. Fear that God will not be enough for them. Fear that without your interference, the world will break. And so we become saviors in training, and we make disciples for ourselves, dependent ones who look to us for their next breath. That is not love. That is bondage dressed nicely. Now let us say this so plainly that you can carry it with you. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you in any wise need them. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Do you see that? Real help never makes you dependent on me, on a teacher, on a partner, on a friend, on any outer structure. Real help points to the Comforter within, to the presence already at the center of your being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The only Savior is the realized activity of the Christ, moving as your own consciousness. So what is the practice today? First, refuse the reflex to advise, to correct, to carry, to organize another's soul. When someone comes, child, mate, friend, student, client, before words, say gently, "Let us go to God together." Not as a performance, not to impress. Sit, 3 minutes if that is what you have. Stop, be still. Let the solving impulse drop. And within, not for show but as truth, I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this individual, unto this situation. Not my thought, not my cleverness, thy grace as the activity. Then wait. If an impulse comes, one sentence, a question, a silence, offer only that. If nothing comes, hold them in the hush and do not manufacture. Where do you meet their fear, their anger, their lack? Not in their personality. You meet the claim within your own consciousness. As yesterday, 2 times 2 is 5 appearing as their story. Quietly you acknowledge, this has no law. God is the law. And then you let grace be the government. The moment you try to fix them, you are in competition with their mind, with your mind, with the picture. The moment you stand as instrument, there is no competition at all. Do you see that? And here is the 5th measurable change. There is less defensiveness and more listening. Conversations soften without your pressing. Compassion is warm, but it does not collapse into their drama. You feel with them without becoming them. Boundaries clarify without hardness. You can say no without guilt. You can say yes without pride. Sometimes the only gift is presence. Sometimes a single word has weight because it is given, not grabbed. The relationship is no longer a stage for your competence. It becomes holy ground where grace can flow. As this settles, a new battleground makes itself known. If you are not the fixer, not the savior, not the indispensable friend, who are you? When the role's quiet, the me that fed on them comes forward to be seen. Tomorrow we will meet that one, not to punish, but to let it quietly step aside in the light of what is true. For today, let it be enough that help is no longer a personal achievement. It is the activity of Christ realized within and allowed to flow. Do you see that? Day 6 then, and we come to the root. Under all our clever efforts, under even our spiritual talk, there hides this belief. I am a human being with a mind, a will, a life of my own, and therefore I must manage everything. Do you see that? It sounds responsible. It sounds adult. It is actually the old management claiming sovereignty over a kingdom it never owned. And it is this belief, not the bills, not the symptoms, not the headlines, that keeps the strain alive. Now, we are not going to whip it or argue with it. We are going to see it and let it quietly step aside in the light of what is true. And what is true? God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. All that the Father hath is mine. Not mine as a private stash, but mine in consciousness, as the substance and activity of the life that is appearing here. This is not duality. We are not appealing to a far-off deity to lend us some power. We are acknowledging that the only I there is God being itself, as the very awareness that hears these words. Do you see that? Now watch what happens in practice today. The intervals are not so much doing as stopping the false doing. You sit your few minutes. You stop. You are still. You let the solving impulse drop. And then, in the soft center of that, you notice the one who keeps reaching for the controls. I must decide. I must foresee. I must ensure the outcome. And instead of wrestling, you gently, almost affectionately, say within, I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am willing to be a willing instrument. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this very life. Then you rest again. The person is not destroyed. The person is dethroned. The chair it sat in so long is quietly occupied by presence. The change is concrete. Choices still come. Tasks still appear. You still sign your name and wash your face and keep your word. But it is done from an interior consent, not from an anxious compulsion. The reflex to argue with every possibility loses its edge. And here is the sixth measurable change. Fear of outcomes diminishes. Even when a circumstance is unresolved, the inner atmosphere stays steadier. There is weather out there perhaps, clouds or sun. Within, the climate is governed. Do you see that? The pulse no longer spikes at every notification. The next step shows itself without the drumbeat of, what if, what if, what if? Let us be plain. Christ consciousness is not an achievement of the person. It is the disappearance of personal strain in the recognition of God as your life. Not a larger me, but less of me at all. And as this recognition inches from glimpse to baseline, tomorrow will not require a trumpet. Day 7 is not a finale with fireworks. It is the simplest evidence. One uneventful, ordinary day lived from this new center. Walking the same streets, answering the same phone, yet finding the place whereon you stand is holy ground, because it is met from presence rather than from fear. Do you see that? Day 7 then, and the day looks like any other. You wake, you wash your face, you make the coffee. There is a small mess on the counter, a message on the phone that wants a quick answer, a calendar square with 2 items bumping against each other. Later a car edges in front of you. A coworker's note has a little sharpness in it. The bank app pings. A loved one texts, "Can we talk?" Ordinary, familiar. And yet, underneath, something is not the same. The government has changed. Do you see that? You are not walking with a new armor. You are walking without the old whip. There is a quiet that is not manufactured. The impulse to rush arrives, but it does not get the last word. The decision does not come as a wrestling match. It appears as a small, weighted yes or no that carries you to the next right thing. You reply to the message after one breath, and without the need to explain yourself into safety. You let the other car in without the sermon about fairness running in your head. You open the coworker's note, and you hear the unhappiness behind the tone. You answer the content and leave the heat alone. You are not acting spiritual. You are not performing kindness. It comes through you as if it belonged to the day before you thought of it. Do you see that? Silence, too, is not a gap that must be filled. Driving, you find yourself without the radio for a few minutes, and it is companionable. Waiting in the grocery line, you do not lunge for distraction. You are aware, easy, present. This is not passivity. It is presence. The place whereon you stand is holy ground, not because the tiles changed or the weather improved, but because consciousness is different. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The holiness is not in the seen, it is in the seeing. And here is the proof of no striving. You notice that A word of encouragement rises when needed and stays absent when it would be performance. You come to a fork, and there is less deliberation and yet more accuracy. You find that, "I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works," is not a sentence you remember. It is the posture you are in. Do you see that? There is less self-congratulation because there is less self to congratulate. The day is carried. Now a sober word, because I would fail you if I pretended otherwise. This atmosphere must be tended. The world beliefs will come again. The old 2 times 2 is 5 in fresh clothes. And you must meet them where you have been meeting them, within. This new baseline is not a trophy. It is a way of being that asks to be acknowledged again and again in little intervals. Not as a religion of minutes, not as a superstition that if you skip one sitting, the sky will fall. No. Simply the quiet fidelity that turns within several times, briefly, honestly, so that grace remains the activity and fear is not re-enthroned. So let the day finish as it began. Ordinary. Wash the cup. Answer the last note lightly. Sit for 2 minutes before sleep and let the solving impulse drop. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this life. Tomorrow we will say what this looks like without organization or dependency. Only a simple rule of life that leaves you free in God. For tonight, receive the evidence. Life looks the same, and yet it is met from presence rather than from fear. Do you see that? Now, how do we walk on without fanfare and without backsliding into the old management? We do it by a rule of life, so small it can hide in a pocket, and so faithful it will govern a lifetime. Several times a day, 3 to 5 minutes, we turn within. Not to get something, not to change a picture, to abide in the fact of God as being, God as individual being. God is your being. God is my being. This is not duality. It is the quiet recognition that the place whereon you stand is holy ground, because the one that stands is the one. Let there be a simple rhythm. In the morning before the day begins, stop. Be still. Let the solving impulse drop. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this day. Midday, a reset. 3 minutes to return ownership to where it belongs. Not my control, thy governance. Evening, a release. All outcomes rest in God. I relinquish the ledger. And when fear spikes, an email hits, a bill arrives, the body whispers, do not launch into battle. Make an emergency turn. 30 seconds will do. This is a claim only. It has no law. God is the only law. Let thy grace be the activity here. Then be quiet. Do you see that? Now, a firm warning said with love. Do not replace this with spiritual shopping. Not more teachers, more memberships, more recordings, more slogans to paste over unrest. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you, in any wise, need them. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. The Comforter is not in my voice, not in a building, not even in your affection for this message. The Comforter is within your own being. No memberships are required to stand in God. No tithe buys you access to grace. No more shall you worship in this mountain, nor yet in that temple, but in spirit and in truth. Do you see that? And what if nothing seems to happen? Keep the appointment. The value is the yielding itself. Grace is never commanded. Grace is allowed. Dryness is not a verdict. It is a claim to be met within. 2 times 2 is 5 in religious clothing. Meet it without heat. I am not here to feel something. I am here to yield. Father, be thou the activity. Then rest your 2 or 3 minutes and go on. Tomorrow, keep the appointment again. This is not moral heroism. It is fidelity to what is. If you wish a weekly cadence, let it be this. Hold the daily turns as given, and once a week, sit 10 quiet minutes to notice, without audit or pride, the evidence. Less reactivity, more inner yes and no. A loosened grip on the bank book and the clock. Relationships handled with listening rather than rescuing. Not to congratulate, but to verify. The infinite way is not a message. It is an experience. The proof is that life looks the same and is lived from a different center. So go forward free. No new dependency, no metaphysical platitude cliché business. No hiring God as a consultant. Several little turns, brief and honest, until turning is no longer an action, but your atmosphere. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this life. And do you see? This is simple, and it is self-verifying. Now live it.